Merhaba, which is hello in Turkish, and welcome to the M&E Show. My name is Emily.
And my name is Ethan. Let's start off with 3 deep breaths. In through your nose. Hold it. Exhale. In through your nose. Hold it. Exhale. One more time. Inhale through your nose. Hold it. And relax. Exhale. And now that we're settled in, welcome to episode number 17.
17, yeah, 17.
17.
Yes. I had an idea for this episode.
Ooh.
And I'm just going to start with a hard-hitting question.
Brace yourselves.
I'm wording this question the way I'm wording it for a reason. So if you have any
As opposed to not for a reason.
Well, in case you have any immediate feelings from this question, I understand those feelings. I have the same, maybe similar feelings. Ethan, is mental illness real?
Pause for dramatic effect. Is mental illness real? What is real? Aha. Hard-hitting question right back.
I want to say
If there's ever a hard question, just ask a equally hard one right back before answering.
Well, I ask because this has been an in and out dialogue we've had throughout our relationship, which sprung from the eating disorder, which I am recovering from. And I remember when I first sort of brought up the ED to you, you're already smiling. Ethan expressed having similar symptoms like, oh, I've binged before. I binge.
And restrict.
And I just find it interesting. I feel like we have differing thoughts when it comes to the diagnosis. There are many mental illnesses. I think it's a spectrum of, like, there are symptoms that are really extreme in various mental illnesses, and then there are less extreme symptoms. But I guess we can talk specifically about the eating disorder because I think, and you've acknowledged this too, the struggles that come along with all mental illnesses are valid. I mean, I can't imagine like extreme personality disorders. But when it comes to things maybe the majority of people experience, like anxiety, depression, eating disorders, we've had interesting dialogues when it comes to an official diagnosis versus we all experience symptoms of these things we give such serious titles to, or have titles that have serious like connotations and weight. So I'm wondering if you're able to expand on those thoughts.
So the original question is mental illness real? And I feel like this is such a sensitive subject, and I'll treat it with care, the care that it deserves. I do believe many people are suffering from issues that they are faced with mentally. And that could be something as simple and as common as anxiety. anxiety is at least the way I've experienced it, is a physical sensation that comes from overthinking or
Future projecting.
future tripping.
Future tripping.
So is that real? Yeah, I sweat more, my heart rate's faster, my palms get sweaty. That is 100% a real sensation that I'm feeling. Is it a mental illness? That seems far for something common like anxiety. I don't know if I would call that an illness, but for sure it's real. I want to go to the other end of the spectrum and think about, even though it's probably close to as common, like depression, because I think depression is probably one of the main mental illnesses that people face that can be life or death.
Mm.
And
So that's more of a mental illness than like general anxiety disorder.
I believe it's more severe and can have greater consequences for people
Mm-hmm.
in a spectrum of something that's detrimental to someone's health and well-being. You can get around and be okay in society with having a little anxiety, and you could probably get around with a little depression, but when you're severely suffering from depression, it's really hard and it's debilitating in a lot of ways, because I've experienced what that feeling is, and it's horrible. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. So I know how real it is when one is experiencing it. I also know what it's like to not have it, not have it anymore, and have it come in once in a while in my life, but not to the degree that I did suffer at one point in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there are mental illnesses that exist, that are real, that people suffer from 100%. Are we? Yeah, I'll just answer your question. Yes, it is 100% real.
If at all, to what extent do you think the labels of an eating disorder or I mean, I just want to also say that we are far from experts. Um, Neither of us have studied mental illnesses, but it's so common today. And I think our dialogue about our lack of understanding, uh,
You and I, or
yeah,
society?
just you and I, but the more dialogues we have about our misunderstanding, the more we'll be better able to understand and have peace overall. But to what extent, if at all, do you think the label of like an eating disorder or I have anxiety or depression is not an excuse, but like a crutch of sorts? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because on one hand, like that's where the stigma comes from. Like the stigma comes from the question, to what extent do you really have control and you're not willing to face what is going on and you're using it as an excuse? But on the other hand, I'm like, maybe that person, it's not ideal to use it as an excuse, and that's part of the struggle, like, using it as an excuse, like, that's not ideal. I wish I didn't have the ED, um, and sometimes it is an excuse, like, for me it has been in terms of me going after things, and it's like, "Oh, you're just using it as an excuse," but at the same time, I'm like, "Yeah, it's an excuse."
Hmm.
And maybe, like, on one hand, judgment might come up when it comes to people saying, "Oh, I have anxiety." But on the other hand, like, maybe they're not aware that they're doing that. And
That's causing them more anxiety.
yeah, like, I wonder to what extent that judgment or that question of to what extent is an excuse is useful. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hmm. We give power to things when we speak about them, especially out loud. So if someone says, I have anxiety, they're reaffirming their belief that they have anxiety. It might be true. They might suffer and deal with anxiety from time to time. But by saying it out loud and affirming it, it's reminding yourself, oh, yeah, I have this.
Like you're identifying with it.
You're identifying with it rather than saying,
I'm feeling anxious.
yeah, I'm feeling anxious in this moment and that's okay. You're saying, I have. It's like, you have anxiety? Like, always? Sometimes? Never? I feel like it's easier to just attach yourself to a title, even if it's a negative thing, and not go deeper and say, well, when does the anxiety come up? It doesn't come up when you're sitting at home watching TV, right? Okay, well, why aren't you anxious there? Well, there's nothing to be anxious about. I'm watching a television show. But for me, when I did the comedy show a few days ago, I was anxious. I was excited, but I was for sure anxious. I sweat. My heart rate it's up. It's way higher than normal, and I feel it.
Mhm.
And in part, some part of me doesn't want that, but another part of me is like, wow, okay, someone said this a while ago. It's a privilege to have anxiety. It means you're doing something that's meaningful, that's important, that's possibly scary. And for me, it was getting up in front of 100+ people to talk about vulnerable things. So many people are really scared to do something like that, and the fear is all pre doing the actual thing, because once you actually do it, as you know, getting on stage, it goes away. It disappears.
Mm-hmm.
The fear, the anxiety, it's all gone because now you're actually in the moment and you're not thinking about the thing that's coming later. And so I think a lot of the stuff that we face, all the possible mental conditions that we have, can be treated by taking action and by acting in the moment instead of overthinking and allowing our thoughts to take over. Because once you just start doing, you can't really be thinking at the same time. And while it might be hard to start doing, if you're super depressed, going to the gym is hard. It's not an easy thing to do. But once you get there and you start working out, inevitably, you're going to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just acknowledging to people that it's okay to feel the things, but let's take action. Let's get up and let's freaking do the damn thing and make the change that we need, instead of sulking in it and acting like there's no solution. Because there's an answer. There is something to do, I believe, for almost all mental illnesses that exist. There's something that you can do to make yourself feel better. It might not completely cure yourself of a disease or an illness, but it'll make you feel a little bit better in the moment. I believe that. I have a positive outlook on mental illness and disease. I think we can all significantly improve our health from where it's at right now as a collective, as a society,
Mm-hmm.
by helping each other too.
Yes. Yes, one thing that I have learned over and over again is opposite action, which you were just describing is like not wait for the thoughts to come in order to do the positive action, but even if you feel horrible, you do the action anyway, and then the positive thoughts will follow as a result. And I'm wondering, I feel like maybe the majority of people, including myself, I don't believe this anymore. And we can discuss maybe why, but maybe there is still a part of me. I mean, a part of me very much empathizes with what I think is the majority of people that might feel that the thoughts have to come first. Like, I feel like that's potentially why people are not as physically fit in this country, because the shame or whether it's shame or depression or any negative obstacles, like how do we remove that if the majority of people are experiencing that? Like they really, because sometimes I get resistant when you say things like you just have to go to the gym, you have to just show up and that's it. Like it's simple. But I've really been, and I think you've been too, like, it's not simple. There's nothing more that holds more weight than the resistance,
It's simple,
technically. Like,
technically, but it's
objectively, the action of walking?
correct. It's a very
Yes.
simple thing. It's not easy. It's not easy. I agree with the fact that it's not easy. The formula doesn't change. The formula never changes for being healthy. But things get in our way and we complicate it because of the things. We allow our thoughts to sometimes take over instead of just sticking with the formula that we know works
By just showing up.
by just showing up. If you know a recipe's good, if you don't feel good one day, you're not going to change the recipe because you don't feel good. You're going to stick with the same recipe. You know it, the food tastes good. How you feel isn't going to change that the recipe works.
So, what do you think is the antidote to people who are resistant to the idea of, like, just show up?
Accountability, community, having someone to hold your hand and that you are showing up for something more than yourself. Like, for example, for me on Sunday mornings with Dead Dad Run Club, there's so much we need to talk about with my dead dad stuff, but every Sunday morning at 9 a.m., and we're towards the end of February, so it's been cold these last 2 months. I do not like running in the cold. I do not like it. It is not fun. I am very aware that I do not like running in the cold. But every Sunday morning at 9 a.m., I show up to Columbus Circle, and whether just Sebastian shows up or we have a few of our amazing members of the club come and join us, we run 3.1 miles in Central Park. We showed up when it was 16 degrees, when it was 20 degrees, when it's like 35. We're so happy. We're happy no matter what. But I do not wake up on Sunday morning and even have a second thought of not showing up. Because there are people there, even if it's just one other person, Sebastian, who's the co-founder with me, that I'm showing up for. And it's more than me. It's greater than myself. And therefore, I have accountability. I have to show up for other people. That's the key. When you're dealing with depression and mental illness and something, you're so stuck in your own world, you forget that you can actually impact other people. And sometimes when you don't feel good and you can make someone else feel better, that'll actually help you.
For sure.
Helping ourselves often comes from helping others first and seeing that even when we're not feeling great, we can still impact other people. And that is so motivating for us when we're in a dark place to know that we can still impact others positively. So I think accountability and having something or someone to show up for is huge.
I hear you. I think that's a beautiful response. What if the person doesn't even feel like they are worthy of accountability? Like, even showing up for that is difficult.
Yeah. It's sad because I know so many people probably struggle and don't have anyone in their corner to lift them up when they're down. And that's really tough. And I can't imagine what that's like to not have a support system that tells you when you're down how much you're worth.
Mm.
And I think, I mean, this is going to sound funny, but ChatGPT. Go on ChatGPT. Have ChatGPT tell you how amazing you are. Talk to a freaking machine that can tell you the exact words you might need to read to feel better. Tell ChatGPT, a robot, a computer, how you're feeling, how depressed you are, how sad you are, how anxious you are, how alone you feel. And let the algorithm give you words of affirmation that you need to feel better. If there's not a single person that's going to make you feel worthwhile, if you're not willing to tell another human because it's too vulnerable, you're in too dark of a place. I think that is actually where I believe AI and technology is going to help people.
Mm.
And I'm sure it already has. You said it the other day you were talking to ChatGPT.
Yeah. It's an amazing I just got into ChatGPT and it's
Yeah, you're
something.
late to the party.
It is something. It really is something. I wanna try answering my own question of, like, what if that person even has trouble showing up for other people or, like, being vulnerable to other people? And for me, I know when I've been in that dark, isolative place, there's only so long I can stay in bed and consume media. Like, it gets to a point where I cannot do it anymore, and then, like, it really takes hitting that bottom, and maybe it's about letting that person hit that bottom for them to lift themselves up by their bootstraps.
Mm,
Like, I can't I it's hard to imagine another way besides that for someone to really take full responsibility of their life, uh, without blaming something else or someone else. What do you think about that?
yeah, my coach Kyle. Shout out Coach Kyle. Amazing coach. And I was telling him about me coming out of that 2-month nap where I was just really out of it and I'm still slowly leaving that place. He said it has to get so uncomfortable in that place that it's more uncomfortable to stay there than it is to do something about it.
Yeah.
And hitting rock bottom is actually exactly what we need because it's so bad. It's so hard that the only way out is to do something about it.
Mhm.
And yeah, we just can't stay in that dark place that long anymore.
Mhm.
And I think so many people are dealing with it. It needs to be, it's becoming more mainstream talking about mental health issues. But I think the more open we can all be, the better everyone will feel because everyone will understand that we're all dealing with it. No one's safe from this.
Mhm.
And by talking about it, you'll learn from other people what their practices are to make themselves feel better in the moment.
I wanna say that I think you and I both agree that if we had proper mental health education and
From a young age.
from a young age, resources, learned healthy coping strategies from a young age, how to respond to difficult experiences one might face in life.
Could you give me an example of what that looks like? Like one example of what proper mental health teaching looks like from
Yeah.
a young age?
I think let's start with elementary school students. I feel that if they were taught about
Like my mom's a second grade teacher. What could she do in a lesson or in a classroom?
I think an exercise as simple as, okay, we're going to all sit in silence and just be. And then after that, kids write down the thoughts they had or the experience they had by just sitting in silence. Like kids could write, I did not feel good. I felt like everyone was staring at me, like just different thoughts and strengthening that muscle of just being from a young age and learning how to observe the thoughts and then respond to them. If kids were taught the practice of journaling and drawing and creativity and treated various gentle mental health coping exercises and strategies uh as like routine.
Yeah.
And also like about feelings. Like what do we think of jealousy? What do we think of anger? Like just having an open dialogue with kids of different emotions and what comes up for everyone and different experiences kids can share and other kids responding, just more openness in general. But we both agree that if that was enforced, like, there'd be significantly less mental illness, but because I believe our education system is antiquated and because a lot of us, the longer that time goes on without knowing without having mental health knowledge, the harder it is to deal with the trauma we've experienced. So, it's so crucial that we just start when we're young, um, which is interesting, like, which makes me think although I've been, upset by, um not that he's always validated the ED and the struggles I have had, but I've experienced upset for various reasons when he would say, like, "Emily, it's okay, like, we all have the urge to eat more than we want to. We all wanna restrict." Like, it and, um, I forgot where I was going with that.
I feel like by me saying that, it, in a way, even though I don't mean it like that, almost invalidates that what you have is special.
Yeah,
That
for
what
sure.
you have is unique. Whereas everyone has a little bit of it.
Mhm.
Yours might be way more extreme, and therefore it's affected you in a way that has been detrimental to your health. But there's not a human being on this earth who hasn't dealt with some unhealthy thought when it comes to food.
I wanna share
Mm.
that it hurts when I hear and when I slightly believe that the ED is there to feel like I do have an excuse, like, I understand why the stigma exists, and at the same time, yeah, like, the struggle has been so real. I went to treatment for it, and, I mean, we're just beginning to discover all these things about the brain, and I just encourage, especially when it comes to mental health and various struggles we all might be experiencing under the umbrella of mental health, we all need to give each other grace because we're still, in the beginning stages and still learning. Like, I'm as far
Hmm.
as I am in recovery, I'm still learning. Like, there's a reason why I well up with tears when Ethan said what he just said of feeling special, and I mean, that's part of the disease. But it also forces one to take responsibility, which is what we all need, which again becomes that much harder the older we get and the more that time has gone
Mm.
on by investing in whatever problem you're facing. Like, that's so real. Um, do you have anything more to say on that before I move
Yeah,
on?
I think we also have to unlearn a lot.
Yes, for sure.
Even more importantly than learning is unlearning so many of the things that we were bombarded with as children
Mhm.
and told this is right, this is wrong, do this, don't do that. So much of that came from possibly our parents, our teachers, the people in society that we looked up towards who were also not getting the right messaging and teaching. And we've all been brainwashed in a
100%.
way
Yeah.
to act a certain way, to speak a certain way, to be a certain way. And we have to awake from the fact that all of that is, or a lot of that is total BS.
Yeah.
You and I and you and everyone is allowed to be whoever they want to be. there are rules in this world, and we can't jump off a building and expect to live, right? There's gravity. Gravity is real. If you murder someone, you will go to jail. If you're or prison, if you're caught, there are rules, but we're allowed to express ourselves. We're allowed to speak our truths. We're allowed to say pretty much most things out loud without getting in trouble. But as children, we were taught to not do that. So we have to unlearn the fact that we're allowed to do a lot more things than we think. And we don't have to be closed off the way that we were taught to be. I think as children, we should be allowed to just have a specific place and time to truly just speak out whatever we're feeling, whatever we're going
Thoughts.
through. Not, you have to answer this question, you have to sit in this chair, you have to pay attention to this teacher who's teaching you a lesson. It's like, what am I dealing with? Like, what am I feeling right now in this? Like, we're so antiquated to just be the student. The teacher's here, listen to the teacher, go from here to there. It's like so much of this is like trained in us that it's really hard to break those habits. And I think a lot of mental illness, it starts from that, and we don't even realize that it goes way back to suppressing ourselves from a young age.
Yes.
And now, thankfully, we're in a time in society where it's acceptable to just speak out and be yourself. And it's an amazing time to be alive, because people are so much more accepting now of others and of ourselves. And it's a beautiful thing. I'm so grateful to be living in a time like this. As crazy and as scary as it might be, I think we're living in the best time in the world.
I think that's very well said. I agree. I feel like we really can be on the precipice of an awakening and realizing, wow, we are all complicit in the way society is today. And I believe it all starts with how we educate our children. And again, I think the current system is antiquated. And I mean, it would be so cool if kids could just, like, for 5 minutes, all right, we're all going to do a collective scream and just get all our anger out. Just simple exercises like that.
Yeah, let kids be kids.
Creative and
wild, imaginative, weird. As soon as a kid is told not to do that, imagine that one circumstance where a kid does something that he thinks is or she thinks is right and is told no. One thing as a child could just totally transform the way you live the rest of your life, and you might not even know it right now.
It's crazy. Brains are so impressionable, like, at that age, and the grooves, the patterns of thinking already begin to form, so we need to be so intentional with how we speak to kids, what we encourage kids to do and be. Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and ask you about your thoughts on medication. Because I know you have a shirt that says meditation over meditation over medication. And I remember when he first wore that shirt and we talked about it. And of course, we've had quite a few conversations about it since then. But I'm wondering, I want both of us to share what our current thoughts are.
I am speaking from someone who has no specific medical background. Let me just preface with that. There's so much we don't know as civilians of this country about what goes on behind the closed doors of pharmaceutical companies, the government. There's just so much that we are not privy to. How much medicine is being sold and given out and made
SSRIs.
into massive businesses, specifically in this country. We're just talking about the United States. It seems way more than is necessary. And it's a business. At the end of the day, it is a business. That is what medication is. That is what most things you can always take it back to money. And so anytime money's involved, there's going to be, especially if it's a lot of money, there's going to be things that are happening
Other motives.
that are not motivated by just we want to make everyone healthy. So I think overall many people are taking medication that is not necessary. And that can be, people can be helped in other ways before resorting to putting someone on medication. Now, are there medications that save people's lives and help people? Absolutely. There's definitely, incredible advances in technology and medicine that have allowed us to live longer and healthier. So there are some medications that are incredible, and I'm so grateful to be living in this time where we have access to that. So in some ways medication is incredible, and then in other ways it's absolutely overprescribed and oversold to help profit, help these massive businesses profit. And I think that that's so messed up, and we as a society need to wake up to that and realize what's happening, and that it's not about our health, it's about money.
I hear you. You said medications being used when there are so many other ways that
Yeah,
should be thought of first.
for
And
sure.
I want to counter that and be like, in order for people to practice those other ways, like homeopathic, like meditation and different ways of coping, medications used in order to get to that place. Like, it makes the symptoms of struggle less so they can learn how to incorporate these healthy strategies and feel that they don't have to be on medication forever. Like, medication, I believe, uh, should be temporary. Like, that's ideal. If you really feel like you don't have the wherewithal to practice healthy coping strategies and feel better, um, it's kind of like opposite action. Like, you take the medication in order to have the thoughts be better in order to do the positive actions. And then the more you're able to strengthen the muscle of the positive actions, the more you can start to wean off the medication. But I agree, like, it's saved people's lives. Like, if you need it, yes. And like, if you're not doing your best to practice the other healthy coping strategies that you can do in order to eventually get off the medication, then I question that.
Yeah, once again, we're not doctors, and I feel like talking about medicine is hard from two people who know very little about it. And I haven't taken really anything. I know you've taken some stuff in the past.
I've taken. Mhm.
I for sure, I've never been diagnosed, but I for sure could be on some sort of medication to help with my focus, or even with my mental health. Like if I went to a doctor and I said I have anxiety, like there's for sure something that I could be prescribed. Could I benefit from it? I'm sure I could. But I also think I know myself, and I know that become I have a propensity to become habitual or addicted to something if it's working. So the idea of starting something, it working, and then going off of it seems scary. And I'm like, let me just do everything I can to not have to possibly go through that. Let me do all the natural things I can. And I feel like the natural ways of doing it are harder.
Yeah, for sure.
And therefore, taking a pill in the morning is much easier than going to the gym or than meditating for 10 minutes
Or
and
thinking about the
journaling.
root cause of
Yeah.
what's actually causing.
So it's a Band-Aid on a wound that needs much more uh, work done on it. And why aren't we going to the root cause? Why are we just putting a Band-Aid on something that is much more much deeper than just a little cut on the surface? That's what I question. I question why, and I don't have the answer, but I have an idea, and I think we're starting to realize, like, these companies profit from continuing to keep people on medication. If someone has, let's say, anxiety, and there's a pill that they could take every day that helps them not feel anxious and just be able to be steady, and someone prescribes it to them for 5 or 10 years, instead of saying, hey, try meditating and doing this and that. Like, think about how much money one person over 5 or 10 years by paying for one piece, like one pill. Think about how much a company makes from that person. Why would they want them to be healthy? They wouldn't. For the sake of profit, that company 100% wants that person to be on medication. So how can you trust them? How can you trust that they're doing the right thing and not just thinking about their bottom line? You can't. I don't think we can.
I just want to add, like, to how we educate our children. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing if kids were taught opposite of instant gratification and really learned patience, like patience and grace ingrained at a young age would give people the courage now to uh not expect immediate results when it comes to, I'm going to go off medication, I'm going to go to the gym and like different things like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cuz it takes time to strengthen the muscles of homeopathic alternatives to medication and healing. It takes time to strengthen those muscles.
Yeah. Which is why most people turn to the easy choice, which is pop a pill in the morning
A numbing.
and numb whatever it is that's underlying your surface level anxiety or depression or whatever else it is that we're dealing with in this modern day and age.
Yes. Ethan, thank you so much for having this dialogue with me. It's so interesting. Like, I very much understand that. I don't even want to say sides, like both sides, because there's no both sides. There are different avenues of thought and variables involved with uh, a diagnosis or why someone is the way they are. So yeah, I just hope we and everyone can have more dialogues. Like, we're not, I think a lot of these dialogues can put people on the defensive, and I totally empathize with that. Um, at the same time, we're not trying to be like, you're right, no, I'm right, or like, this is the solution. Ideally, there will be a solution, but I don't know. I don't think a solution for this topic is meant to be out of haste, because I think out of haste, that means there are other motives for the
Yeah.
haste than actually being open to everything that's here and everything that should be taken into account. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, imagine if everyone was just healthy tomorrow.
That'd be wild. That'd be
Everyone just wakes up tomorrow healthy,
happy.
happy, and then what? What happens to all of these organizations, these massive companies that are profiting off of people being sick? They're literally profiting off of people being sick. Like, I owned a gym and I profit off of people being healthy. Like, if you're sick, you can't come to the gym. you go to a doctor and you get something. The only way to really show up at a gym is to be healthy enough to do it. And by showing up to the gym and paying me, or you were paying me, you don't end up going to the doctor. You avoid having to suffer because you're doing something that's challenging for yourself. But yeah, like society would completely cripple in so many ways. These companies would just picture that. It's such an amazing thing to think about. Like,
I didn't even
being
think about,
healthy.
when you said picture everyone's healthy tomorrow, I didn't even think about the big companies. Like I thought about society. Like, what if everyone was truly happy and healthy? Like, what would society itself be like? What would daily interactions be like? What would work be like? It's a crazy thought. It's almost overwhelming. It's wonderful, but it's like, whoa.
Yeah,
But
you walk outside. I mean, we live in New York City. Imagine everyone was just
like smiling and saying hi to each other.
Yeah. No one had any hate in their heart or
Resentment towards
or judgment or
their current life.
overthinking. Everyone was just present with each other and here. That's what we're trying to get to, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
At least Emily and I would love to live in a space and a place in a society in a universe that is fully embracing one another and living in love.
Yes.
And we are dealing right now, our current society is dealing with mental health epidemic, drug epidemic, and not drugs, not even just drugs that are prescribed, illegal drugs that, or I guess some of them are even legal but are overprescribed and therefore finding people who don't even need them at all and are then taking advantage of them.
Yeah, I think it's an overall numbing epidemic, like even with social media. Like, what if we just removed all the numbing? What would be here? Let's all face it.
Yeah. Ooh, I get the chills thinking about that because I think I forgot what book it was that was saying how much worse off, at first at least, society would be if there was no bars and drinking on the weekends.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like if people didn't have an outlet to let off some steam from their week.
Especially when they were never taught how to
and
properly let off steam as a child.
Like, think about how many people on the weekends just go out and drink and distract themselves from what they're really feeling and facing. And imagine that was just taken away. It would be crazy at first. And then a lot of people wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
A lot of people would not make it. And that's sad. It is sad. But is that what we need?
We'll leave it. Oh.
Do we need that?
I think we'll leave it there.
That's the question. Do we need a
complete
cleansing?
Cleansing of numbing.
What would that lead to?
Yeah. Good question.
Thought experiment. What does society look like without
all the things we use to know?
Including food.
Dun, dun, dun.
We're still eating, but no more processed junk. No more preservatives. Everything is as healthily. I keep using that word. Everything is healthy. Everything is.
Oh, I gotta go.
What time is it?
It's 1:07.
Okay. We ran past normal, but you know what? We so enjoying talking.
Yes.
At least I am.
Yes, 100%. Thank you so much for being here. Have a beautiful day.
Farewell.